Hey everyone, if you're new here, my name is Asteria and today we're talking about the books that I read in 2020. With the whole pandemic going on, most of us have been inside pretty much this whole year, and many of us resorted to our coping mechanisms during this time. My coping mechanism just happens to be reading, which is good because I managed to read 56 books in 2020. I'm going to be talking about the books that I read this year. Now, just keep in mind that many of the books that I mentioned are Wattpad books. Wattpad does have some really good books if we just know where to look. And I mean, who can say no to free books, right? So a lot of these books are Wattpad books, but I have only mentioned the ones that are listed on Goodreads. If the book is not on Goodreads, I don't mention it in this video. So whatever books I have mentioned, you can find it on Goodreads. You can add me on Goodreads via the link in the description. We can be friends on Goodreads if you want. So let's get started with the books that I have read this year. The first book that I read was I Fight for Her by Evella Cotonis on Wattpad. It's a Wattpad book and I think it's gonna get published soon as a paperback as well. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I mean it was almost a year ago, so it's been a long time, but I do remember it being a really good book. The second book that I read was Turtles All the Way Down by John Green, and I do remember being kind of disappointed with this book because the end felt very anticlimactic. It was like this whole story was building up to something huge in the end, but nothing really happened. So I was very disappointed with the end. In itself, it is a good book, although I won't really recommend it to someone else because as I said, I was very disappointed in the ending of this. After that, I read Nocturnal by Wilder Poetry. It is a poetry book by Wilder Poetry on Instagram, and I'm a really big fan of her work. That's why I decided to buy this book, and really it amazed me. After that, I read The Boyfriend app by Monty Ria on Wattpad. This too was a really good book with a really unique and original plot. I quite enjoyed it and I would really recommend that to everyone. The next one is The President's Daughter by XOXO Mysterious Girl on Wattpad. I'm just checking my Goodreads account over here to see the books because I really can't remember all of those books. So this one is The President's Daughter by XOXO Mysterious Girl on Wattpad. It was good, but it was also kind of cliche because I have read quite a lot of books with a similar plot. After that, I read the Two Gangs and a Golden Girl series by Holly Schmidt on Wattpad. This one has 3 books: 2 Gangs and a Golden Girl, 3 Gangs and a Silver Sin, and 1 Gang in a Bronze Battle. Although the third book is not yet complete, so I'm only mentioning the first 2. This one I remember astounded me because Holly Schmidt has an amazing way with words. She has written a truly mind-blowing series, and if you can, I mean Wattpad is free after all, so if you want you can go ahead and take a look at the series. It's mind-blowing really. Then I read Protecting the President's Son by Kristen Emmons, also on Wattpad. This was a generic book, I mean neither too good nor too bad, so I guess I'm neutral about this. Then I also read The Alpha's Little Witch by Pebble Queen on Wattpad. This had kind of a unique-ish plot. I mean, I had not really read another book with a similar storyline before, so the plot was unique, but once again, I'm very neutral about this book. After this, I read The Omens of a Crow by Dakota Kemp, also on Wattpad. I do read a lot of Wattpad books. I mean, as I said, free books. Who can say no to that, right? But I do remember this book being really amazing. It's a short story. Personally, I'm not really into short stories that much, but this one still caught my eye and it's written really beautifully. It's a really good story. Next, I read Whistleblower by Kate Marchant. This is one of the best books that I read this year. I really love the plot. I really love the writing structure. Everything was amazing. And another one of the awesome books that I read this year was Revenge of the Sluts by Natalie Walton. I have the same feelings towards Revenge of the Sluts and Whistleblower both because they are both really amazing books, and I think they might be one of my favorites from this whole year. Next up, I read Keep You Forever by Chavi Singh. This book is by a friend of mine. I know Chavi personally, so I may be biased in my opinion, but this is a really beautiful book with a lovely plotline, and the setting of this book is just amazing. You should give this a read. Next up, I read the Storm and Silence series by Robert Thayer. It's a historical fiction slash romance, and the two main characters are just adorable. You will fall in love with all of the characters in this series, I guarantee that. Next one is Chronicle of a Death Foretold by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Again, I'm not completely sure if I'm pronouncing that right. This book, again, I'm kind of neutral about because it was neither too good nor too bad, but it is a good read. After that, I read 10 Ways by Tara on Wattpad. This was a short story, so I don't really have much to say about it, but this too, I'm very neutral about. This next book is kind of important because I never ever read non-fiction before. I only ever read fiction. So this was kind of like my first ever non-fiction book, and it is Atomic Habits by James Clear. I only have good things to say about this book because this book is so amazing, because I can genuinely say that it has changed my perspective on habits forever. You cannot go wrong with this book. Just give it a try yourself and see. Next up, I reread the whole Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. I had finished this whole series back in 6th grade, and I'm rereading this now because Rick Riordan has released a new book, The Tower of Nero, and I kind of need to catch up on the whole series after so many years, so I decided to reread them, and I am counting them because they are full-length novels and I did read them. So I read the Percy Jackson series. I'm currently on the filler books, Percy Jackson and the Greek Gods. I might finish that before the end of the year. I don't really know, but let's see. Next up, we have two more Wattpad books, The Good, the Bad and the Bullied by Rubik's Cube and Texting Him by Sage Reed. I don't usually hate books because I'm a huge bookworm and I love just about anything that I read, but I have to say that I quite disliked The Good, the Bad and the Bullied. The story was so spontaneous, there really was no flow in it, and everything was just unrealistic and I could not enjoy it. I couldn't even finish it. Yes, it went into the terrible, horrible DNF zone. Texting Him by Sage Reed was, on the other hand, a light-hearted, good read, although I don't really have a lot to say about it. After that, I read Everything, Everything and The Sun Is Also a Star, both by Nicola Yule, and these books have my heart. They are so beautiful, and these two are also one of my favorites from this year. Then I read The Sun and Her Flowers by Rupi Kaur, and that was also amazing. I also read How to Punch Soren McKinnon by Mignon French on Wattpad. This too was a really good book, although it was very long. It felt kind of dragged out in places, but I did manage to finish it and it was good. It was good. Then I read the Ministry of Curiosity series by C.J. Archer. This book has 10 books in total, and normally I don't commit to a series for that long, but this story is really gripping. The characters are really amazing and the story is just perfect. It's perfect, really. I think this might have been one of the longest series that I have ever read, and I don't even regret it. The story was just that good. Another non-fiction book that I read was 5K Words Per Hour by Chris Fox. This is a book about how to write faster. It is kind of like an exercise for writers, and I would say that it is really helpful. The things mentioned in the book, the exercises, they do really work. Next up, there's Dark Angel by Christine Pope, and this book also kind of disappointed me because it felt like the whole story was just building up to something huge, but then in the end it just didn't happen as you were expecting it to. The whole story, you know exactly what's gonna happen in the end. They tell you from the beginning what the protagonist is looking for, and then the whole story is just building up to that part where the protagonist finds the thing that she is looking for, but it's really unsatisfactory the way it happens, and it feels bland in the end, to be honest. I did try reading the second book, and I won't say it's in the DNF zone yet, although I did put it off for a long while because honestly it's not really that interesting for me personally. It just feels like a huge filler, and a whole book of filler is not really my thing. I might finish it, I might not, I'm not really sure. We'll see. Another non-fiction book that I read was Your Personal Guide to Big Success by Dale Carnegie, and I was astounded. This man wrote this book like many years ago, but the things that he mentioned, they still stand true, and they're still really very helpful in basically all aspects of life. This is one book that I would really recommend you read. It would change your life, I'm telling you. Next up, I read The Secret of Magic, The Forbidden Box by Natasha Lupu. This one was a 3-star read at best. It felt like the story had a lot of potential, but it wasn't really followed through by the author. It felt as if the author was afraid to take the risk and really go all the way with the storyline. But I mean, it was kind of good. I would say it's on the better side of the spectrum, but not really up to its full potential, if you know what I mean. Just a little bit of shameless self-promo in between. I also read my book. I don't know if it counts, but this is my book. I wrote it, I published it. It's a poetry collection. I know it's not the best thing that you will ever read, but it's my first ever and only ever published book till now, and I'm really proud of it. So if you want, you can give it a try. Next up, we have The Truth About Magic by Atticus. This is also a poetry book. I do like Atticus' poetry because his words are in truth magical. He writes about things in such a way that makes you fall in love with the simple and mundane things of life. But there is also the issue of him glamorizing self-harm. He writes about scars and such in a very glorified way of sorts, which is obviously not okay. After that, I read these 4 books from the Slappy World series of Goosebumps. I used to read Goosebumps a lot when I was in middle school because after all, Goosebumps is meant for middle school audiences. And then I kind of left it after that, but my brother's friend wanted the Goosebumps books that I have in my collection, and in return he gave me these 4 books, so I read them recently. So these are The Ghost of Slappy, It's Alive, It's Alive, The Dummy Meets the Mummy, and Revenge of the Invisible Boy. Next up, I read The We Are Woolhire, A New Arrival Under Great Skies by Matthew Tiss, the first book in the Woolhire series, and I really love that story. This story make it confusing at times because there are a lot, and I mean a lot of POV changes. It's like every new chapter is a different POV, and a lot of them don't really connect in the beginning, so it gets confusing at times. But the story in itself is really good. It's a sci-fi fantasy novel, and the premise of the book, the plotline, is very unique, very beautiful, and it is worth a try. And the last book for now is Nisekoi Volume 1. I used to watch the Nisekoi anime when I was a kid, and I remember really loving the story, so I decided to give the manga a try. And I have never really read manga before. This, I think, is my first one. And even though I know the story because I watched the anime a couple years ago, I still really love it. It is a very light-hearted romantic comedy. So those are all the books that I read in 2020. I do have a lot of other books that I'm also currently reading. So I don't know if I'll be able to finish them before 2020 ends or not, but we'll see about that. If you want a video on how I managed to read 56 books in 52 weeks, essentially, on how to speed read and all that, then please let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and maybe consider subscribing. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.